Night has fallen, but Jerusalem still does not sleep. You are walking down a narrow, uneven stone street where every step echoes louder than it should. The air is cold, thick with the smell of burning oil coming from small lamps that flicker on the walls. Some doors are still ajar. There are quiet voices inside, contained laughter, dishes being collected, but something is not normal, and you feel it before you even understand it. Archaeological evidence shows that the streets of Jerusalem in the first century were paved with large blocks of limestone, worn down by the constant flow of pilgrims, especially during Easter. And that's exactly the detail that changes everything. The city is full, much more crowded than it should be at this time. You keep walking and notice movement. It's not the usual nighttime kind of movement. These are not families calling it a day. These are not traders closing their stalls. They are shadows that move too quickly, too silently, and that raises an uncomfortable question. Why are so many people awake? In the distance, a flame moves, then another, and one more. Torches. But they are not fixed. They're walking. You stop for a moment, placing your hand against the cold wall. The stone is rough, cut directly from local limestone, the same type of material that modern excavations have found in residential structures near the Temple Mount. These walls aren't just scenery. They absorb sound, creating acoustic corridors where every step seems closer than it really is, and that's when you hear it. Coordinated steps, firm, constant rhythm. It's not just any group, but that's not all. The metallic sound comes soon after, discreet but unmistakable. Something rigid moves along with the body of the person walking. Equipment, structure, order. This is no coincidence. You slowly turn the corner, and the city seems to breathe deeper. A man hurries past you, avoiding eye contact. Another closes the door with more force than necessary. A child is pulled into the house. There's an invisible tension, as if something is about to happen, or has already started, and you haven't been told yet. Historians estimate that during Easter, Jerusalem could triple in population. Pilgrims coming from Galilee, Judea, even more distant regions, all gathered inside walls that were not designed to accommodate so many people. This created constant pressure, political, religious, and military, because where there are crowds, there is risk, and where there is risk, there is vigilance. You look at the torches again. Now they are closer, and there are more of them than before. They move in groups, coordinates, as if every step had been planned, and that changes everything, because this is not a city that was surprised. This is a city that is being prepared. You feel your body react before your mind follows. Breathing shortens. The silence between the sounds seems heavier. Even the wind passing through the narrow streets sounds different, as if it carries something with it. And then you notice another detail that most would ignore. The streets are not empty. They are partially alive. Some houses still have electricity. Small pockets of activity continue to occur. A group talks in low voices in an internal courtyard. A man watches from the shadow of a stone arch. Nobody interferes, nobody asks. But everyone knows something is happening. And this is where it shifts. Because this is not just an ordinary night in Jerusalem. It's a night when the entire city, even without fully understanding it, begins to align around a single point. A point that is still out of your field of vision. A point that will pull each step, each decision, each destination, you take another step, and without realizing it, it's already in the story. The city you're passing through is not just a scenery. It is a system under pressure. You keep walking, but now you begin to notice what previously went unnoticed. The houses are more crowded. The internal courtyards noisier than normal for this time of day. There are people sleeping, but there are also people awake, watching, waiting, whispering. And this is no coincidence. Scholars estimate that during the Easter festival, Jerusalem could receive tens of thousands of additional pilgrims. The city, which was normally already operating at the limit of its capacity, became a compressed space. Narrow streets, overcrowded houses, constant tension in the air. You feel it on your skin. The space seems smaller, the air heavier, every movement more watched. And here's the detail that changes everything. This is not just a religious celebration. It is a politically explosive moment. Easter celebrates liberation. It celebrates the moment when a people emerged from the oppression of an empire. And now, those same people are once again under rule, this time by Rome. Do you notice the tension? You are inside a city full of people remembering at the same time that they have already been freed. And this is never comfortable for those who govern. But that's not all. Evidence suggests that during these periods, the military presence was discreetly reinforced. Roman troops were positioned at strategic points, especially close to the Temple of Jerusalem, the religious, political, and emotional center of the city. From the top of the structures, soldiers watched. They didn't participate. They did not interfere directly. But they were there, and everyone knew it. You look up for a moment, and you can imagine it. Surveillance towers, still shadows, watchful eyes in the dark. And that creates a specific kind of silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of containment. Now take a closer look at the streets. Archaeologists discovered drainage systems beneath some of these roads, constructed from hewn stone, allowing water and waste to be channeled out of the city. But these same channels created something more: indirect passages of sound. You don't hear everything clearly, but listen enough. Fragments of conversation, footsteps that echo from afar, subtle changes in the rhythm of the city. And that raises another question. If there is so much surveillance, why is this movement still happening? Because what is about to happen needs precision. It cannot be public. It cannot generate turmoil. You can't wake up the whole city at once. It has to happen within this strange balance, movement, without fanfare presence, no announcement action, without immediate chaos. And this is where it gets deeper. Religious authorities are also under pressure. The Sanhedrin, responsible for legal and religious decisions, does not operate in isolation. There is a delicate line between maintaining internal order and not provoking Roman intervention. Any big disturbance can get out of control, and Rome does not negotiate with chaos. You then realize that this night is not impromptu. She is being driven. Every step in the streets, every torch lit, every group that moves in silence is part of something bigger, something that is being executed carefully, urgently, but also scared. And that completely changes the way you see what's coming, because it's not just about capturing a man, it's about avoiding a chain reaction within a city on the verge of rupture. You feel it more clearly now. The weight, the expectation, the tension that doesn't explode, but grows. And in the middle of all this, There is a specific point being surrounded, a place outside the denser immediate walls, a space where the city still reaches but does not completely control. And as you keep walking, realize that all these movements are converging there. And what happens in that place? It will reverberate throughout Jerusalem. The torches continue to advance. Now, you no longer see just stray lights cutting through the darkness of Jerusalem. You notice training, rhythm, direction. What moves through the city at this time is not a disorganized crowd, nor a group of men acting on impulse. It is a force being led with intention, and that makes everything more unsettling. You feel it first by the sound. Sandals clicking on stone with a steady cadence, the dry drag of heavy fabric, the short crack of the wood of lanterns being adjusted in the hands. There are voices, but they are too low to be understood. Nobody wants to announce their presence before the exact moment. Archaeologists discovered that many areas around first century Jerusalem were connected by limestone paths and earthen trails squeezed between walls, olive groves, and farmland. This means that a group could move around at night without completely disappearing, but also without attracting immediate attention from the entire city. Geography itself favored this type of contained movement, and that's what's happening. It's not a noisy hunt. It's a calculated capture. You follow the movement of these lights with your eyes and notice something else. They are not heading toward the brightest center of the city. They are leaving the denser network of houses, heading down towards an area where the terrain opens up space between trees, low walls, and less congested paths. To a familiar place, to a place where someone knew they would find Jesus. And that changes the weight of the scene, because suddenly the night stops seeming spontaneous. She starts to look put together. Evidence suggests that sensitive arrests in that context needed to take place away from the mass of pilgrims and away from the more visible hustle and bustle of the central streets, not for lack of power, but for strategy. The fewer witnesses, the less chance of a collective reaction. But there is one detail that many people ignore. This strength does not just carry authority. She carries fear, because arresting Jesus in broad daylight in front of the crowd would be too risky. The man who was being followed, listened to, and watched had entered Jerusalem days earlier under public attention. His name was already circulating among pilgrims. His teaching already caused fascination in some and irritation in others. So the city needed, I had to do what so many cities under stress do. Act quickly, act at night, act before the news spreads. And this is where the pressure tightens. You start to imagine who makes up this group. Guards attached to the temple, servants of the authorities, men used to obeying, not necessarily interpreting. Scholars estimate that security at the temple complex included its own officers and guards, charged with maintaining order in an area that concentrated religion, money, prestige, and political risk. And on a week like Easter, any disturbance could escalate in minutes. Then they move forward, not like soldiers marching into open battle, but like men entering into an operation that needs to end before the rest of Jerusalem understands what is happening. You feel the tension rising because the city hasn't screamed yet. It hasn't run yet. He hasn't panicked yet. And that's precisely why everything seems heavier. The partial silence creates the sensation that the blow is being prepared within a held breath. Then comes the revelation that breaks the most common image of that night. Jesus' arrest does not begin with an explosion. It starts as an approximation, like urban commuting, like lights moving through dark streets and paths while part of the city is still eating dinner, still talking, still trying to sleep. What most people miss is this: Jerusalem, at that moment, is not sitting still watching an isolated religious drama. Jerusalem is functioning as an active containment scenario. The city participates not only because of what it sees, but because of what it allows. Passages, routes, silence, vigilance, haste. You realize now that the night is closing in around a single point. Each step of these torches shortens the distance. Every bend in the path eliminates an exit. Every man in that group knows that time matters, because if there is hesitation, the group disappears. If there is too much noise, the news spreads. If there is resistance, everything changes scale. And that's why the force advances like this: compact, contained, tense. You can almost feel the flicker of light on the leaves of the olive trees beyond, the tremendous glow on the twisted trunks, the uneven ground beneath your feet, the coldest air outside the city's tightly packed streets. Excavations reveal that retaining walls, agricultural terraces, and olive presses were common around Jerusalem, especially in olive grove areas. This means that the space they walk into is not empty. It's worked, known, frequented. Someone chose this place because they knew how the night would protect it. And now the distance is minimal. The group is no longer just moving, it's coming. And when it arrives, the city that until now has only breathed tension will begin to hold its breath. The air changes before touch. You feel it in the garden. The temperature drops a little beneath the olive trees, and the night's moisture clings to your skin as the uneven ground gives way beneath your sandals, covered in hard earth, small rocks, and ancient roots. Archaeologists discovered that olive trees could remain productive for centuries in Judea, and the agricultural terraces around Jerusalem were supported by low limestone retaining walls. This means that this is not an empty space, nor a wild one. It is a well-known, worked, and frequented place, and precisely for that reason, vulnerable. The lights enter between the trunks first: flashlights, torches, broken reflections on narrow leaves. Brightness doesn't invade everything at once. It fragments. It appears on a face, disappears. Light a stone, then turn it off. For a moment, the scene seems suspended between two worlds, that of the prayer that still resists, and that of the strength that has already arrived. And then you understand. They found the right place, not by chance, but because someone led them there. But that's not all. The most decisive moment of that night doesn't start with screams. It starts with proximity, with steps that slow down, with eyes trying to recognize faces in the dark, with the tension of men who know they need to act quickly, but without losing control. Evidence suggests that a capture of this type during Easter required immediate identification and precise execution. There was no room for confusion. The target needed to be confirmed without commotion. And that's why the kiss weighs so much, not as a gesture of affection, but as a sign, not as an emotion, but as a mechanism. This is the detail that breaks many people's expectations. Betrayal does not enter the story as a dramatic explosion in the first second. It comes as a small, almost intimate gesture, And precisely for that reason, it is more devastating. The signal is silent, almost discreet, but from it, nothing remains whole. You feel the group react at the same moment. The circle tightens, bodies move, voices rise, the night prayer breaks. The disciples, who until now were within a familiar space, suddenly realize that the garden is no longer a refuge. It became a capture point. And this is where it shifts. Because Jesus' arrest is not just the end moment when a man is taken. It's the moment when the world around him begins to fall apart. One of the disciples reacts on impulse. Another retreats. Still another seems frozen between courage and fear. There is no training. There is no plan. There is only the human reaction when the inevitable finally touches the body. Scholars estimate that nighttime gatherings outside the city's densest areas offered less chance of popular interference, but also fewer routes of immediate defense for a small group. They are exposed, and now the collapse has begun. Not with the dawn, not in front of the crowds, but here among ancient trees, flickering light and shallow breathing. What seemed like urban tension until this moment became a real rupture. The garden was found. The signal was given. Hands reach out. And the night of Jerusalem, which until now moved in calculated silence, finally touches the center of the story. Now the city is back on the scene. Jesus has already been taken by the group, and the garden, which a moment ago seemed like a refuge surrounded by the shade of the olive trees, begins to be left behind. You feel the change immediately. The open space gives way once again to narrow paths, stone passages, walls that compress the sound and return each step with more weight. The night remains dark, but Jerusalem has not yet gone out. And that's what makes it all the more disturbing, because while he is led, the city is not dead. She's half awake. Some windows still breathe light. In certain inner courtyards, the low fire of a lamp continues to burn. There are people finishing their last conversation of the day. There is someone washing a stone vase. There's someone hearing noises outside and standing still, trying to decide whether to open the door or pretend they didn't hear anything. Archaeologists discovered that many first-century Jerusalem homes were organized around small inner courtyards with compact rooms, stone floors, and limestone containers associated with ritual purity. This means that domestic life did not disappear all at once when night came. It decreased, but remained pulsing. And now that pulse begins to collide with the prison. You can almost see the doors opening for a moment and then closing. A face appears behind a shadow. A man leans against the arch of an entrance and watches without asking any questions. Nobody understands everything, but many people understand enough. Something serious is going on there, but that's not all. The most disturbing thing is that Jerusalem seems to recognize the weight of the scene before understanding its meaning. The group that takes Jesus does not run in disarray. He advances with controlled urgency, trying to cross the city without turning it into an uproar. Evidence suggests that sensitive actions during festive periods needed to be carried out quickly to avoid popular concentration and unpredictable reactions. The street then becomes a containment corridor, and that changes your perception of everything, because Jesus is not being carried through a sleeping city. He is being taken by a city that listens, a suspicious city, a city that is partially active, partially silent, like a body that has not yet fully awakened, but already feels the pain coming. And this is where the strangeness deepens. Every corner seems to hold its breath. Each lit lamp testifies without declaring itself. Each step over the worn limestone makes the news advance a little further, even before any announcement. Jerusalem has not yet seen the outcome. It hasn't gathered crowds yet. He hasn't screamed yet. But the night already knows. And as Jesus crosses these half-alive, half-suspended streets, the entire city begins, without realizing it, to collapse along with him. And this is where it all falls apart. You're still walking behind the group, but it's not the same scene anymore. Until a few moments ago, there was tension, movement, strategy. Now there is something different, something heavier, more human. The group begins to break up, not the group that leads Jesus, but the group that was with him. You notice it first by its absence. One of them is no longer there. Another retreats, falling behind, as if the body had decided before the mind. There are steps that slow down, looks that avoid the center of the action. Nobody gives an order. No one coordinates a withdrawal. But it happens, silently, instinctively, and that says it all. Archaeological evidence shows that the external areas of Jerusalem, especially between gardens and urban accesses, had narrow paths with little lighting and few points of immediate shelter. This means that at the time of arrest, any small group that was not organized simply became too vulnerable to stay together. And that's exactly what you're seeing. What once seemed like a cohesive group begins to fragment into individuals. But there is something even deeper going on. But that's not all. The rupture is not just physical. She is internal. Can you feel it in how each person reacts? One tries to follow from a distance, but doesn't get any closer. Another stops completely, as if trying to understand if this is real. There are those who look back, as if looking for a way out that no longer exists. And then comes the detail that changes everything. No one was prepared for this. Not like that. Because until that moment, there was an implicit expectation, continuity, forward, of something that was still being built. But now, everything came to an abrupt halt. And when reality breaks an expectation, the body reacts before faith. And this is where it collapses. You see the fear arise, not like open panic, but as a silent decision. Stay or run away. And most choose to run away. Not because they don't care, but because they are human. Scholars estimate that nighttime confrontations, especially involving authorities and possible institutional force, created a kind of immediate self-preservation response. Without support from the crowd, without clarity of what would come next, remaining meant a direct risk. And direct risk activates the most basic instinct, survive, and that completely transforms the scene. Because now you're not just seeing Jesus' arrest, you are watching the collapse of a small world, relationships being broken in seconds, promises being tested without warning, courage being crushed by the unexpected, and perhaps the hardest thing to accept, loyalty being replaced by distance. What most people miss is this. This is not a story of isolated betrayal. It is a night when even those closest to us cannot sustain what they believed they were capable of sustaining. And that makes everything more real, closer, more uncomfortable. Because if you were there, what would you do? Would you continue, or would you take a step back like them? The distance between you and this scene begins to disappear, and as the group disbands in the dark, Jesus continues to be taken, alone. The city hasn't screamed yet, but it's not the same anymore. You stop for a moment, even as the group continues taking Jesus through the stone streets. Something changed in the air. It's not just tension anymore. It is as if Jerusalem has crossed an invisible line, a point where there is no return to what it was before that night. And the most disturbing, almost no one realizes this yet. The houses remain partially lit. Some voices still echo within the inner courtyards. The routine was not completely interrupted, but there is a subtle, almost imperceptible displacement, like when the ground begins to give way before a larger collapse. Archaeological evidence shows that first-century Jerusalem was built on dense layers of limestone, with narrow streets and overlapping structures over generations. This means that the city was not just physical, it was cumulative. Each stone carried history, tension, memory, and that night, one more layer was being placed. But this layer was not visible. It was historic. It was spiritual. But that's not all. You begin to realize that what happened in the garden didn't stay in the garden. It is spreading, not as official news, not as a public announcement, but as a silent wave that passes through doors, corridors, and consciences. A man who heard footsteps earlier now cannot sleep. A woman who saw torches passing by tries to understand why. Someone comments in a low voice, "They took someone," but no one says the name. Not yet. And that creates something even more powerful, uncertainty. And this is where it deepens, because Jerusalem is used to power movements. She is used to judgments, to religious decisions, to silent interventions. But there is something different about this night, something that does not completely fit into known patterns. Evidence suggests that religious leaders needed to act with extreme caution to avoid social unrest, especially during festivities. But when caution mixes with urgency, decisions are made faster than the heart can follow. And that's exactly what you're feeling right now. The speed of events against the human inability to process them. Jesus is no longer in the garden. The disciples are no longer together. The city is no longer innocent. And yet, everything still seems normal on the surface. What most people miss is this: the real collapse doesn't start when everything explodes. It starts when everything still seems under control. But it isn't anymore. You look around once more. The stones are the same. The streets are the same. The houses are still standing, but the story changed direction. And no one can stop it now. Because tonight is not just the beginning of a trial. It's the beginning of a transformation that will cross that city, those people, and somehow reach you. And perhaps this is the most uncomfortable part of all, because moments like these don't just belong in the past. They also exist in the lives of those who watch. Those nights when go breaks and you realize that you can't go back to the way it was before. Those silent hours when everything still seems to be standing, but inside it has already started to fall. Jerusalem is experiencing this now, and you have lived too. The difference is that that night, no one yet knew what would come after dawn. And now, the night has entered you. Because at this point, this is no longer just about Jerusalem. It is no longer just about a prison, about guards moving silently, about stone streets, torches flickering in the dark, and disciples retreating without knowing how to stop what is happening. All of this continues before your eyes, but it also begins to touch a deeper place. You feel the impotence, the moment when something important is snatched from your hands and you realize you can't hold it. And maybe that's what makes this night so unforgettable. It's not just the fact that Jesus was taken. It's the way everything happens while the world around continues to breathe. Some lights are still on. Some doors are still closed. Some people still don't even know what happened. But the story has already changed. And your life probably knows this feeling, that dark hour when on the outside everything still seems to be standing, but inside something has already started to crumble. But that's not all, because there is an even deeper revelation hidden in this scene. Jesus was not arrested in the middle of a silent night because he lost control. He was trapped in the middle of a tense, guarded, partially awakened city because even the chaos of that night got in the way of something greater. Evidence suggests that Jerusalem during Passover was an environment saturated with expectation, control, and instability. And even in this scenario compressed by fear, haste, and power, Jesus does not disappear into the confusion. He goes through the confusion with awareness. This changes everything, because when you look back at the scene, you realize that the center of the night is not just the collapse of the disciples, nor the strength of the guards, nor the fear of the city. It is the steadfastness of Jesus in the midst of collapse. While everyone else loses their bearings, he continues. As the group breaks up, he continues. As the city enters the point of no return, he continues. And this is where it becomes personal. Maybe you also know nights like this, nights when the answer doesn't come, nights when friendships fail, nights when courage disappears, nights when you feel surrounded by decisions, pressures, and fears that you can't control. And what this scene does is rip away from you the illusion that faith always means escaping the darkest moment. Sometimes faith is staying whole inside, even when everything around you starts to fall apart. What most people miss is this: Jesus' arrest does not just reveal the wickedness of men. It reveals human fragility. It reveals how much fear spreads, how much silence weighs, how much the soul trembles when it realizes that it cannot change the course of events. But it also reveals something else, that there is a way to get through the night without being defined by it. That's why this scene doesn't just end in pain. She leaves a question. When your own night comes, when something is ripped away from you, when the street seems too dark, the future too uncertain, and your heart too small, who will you be in the middle of it? Will you be another one running in the dark? Or will you try to remain even though you are trembling? Jerusalem that night seemed strong, but it was cracking inside. The disciples seemed ready, but they were breaking inside. And maybe you've already discovered that it's like that with us too. The great transformation begins when you understand that it is not in control that the soul finds God. It is often at the limit. It's when everything fails around that the heart finally sees what really sustains. So keep this. The night of the arrest was not just the night they arrested Jesus. It was the night that fear showed its face, the night loyalty was tested, the night an entire city collapsed without realizing it, and the night when, even surrounded, Jesus remained. If this script made you feel tonight in a new way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because we're going to get into other scenes that can completely change the way you read the biblical story. And now, I want to hear you. In which area of your life do you feel like you are experiencing a similar night? Write in the comments, because sometimes it's only when the night gets darker that you realize where you're really putting your trust.